Welcome to the Indie Author Showcase, and welcome to our second annual Best of Award Show. I'm Chad Robert Morgan, 7-time award-winning indie author, and as always, I am your host. For those new here, the Indie Author Showcase is a podcast by indie authors for indie authors, where we spotlight basically indie authors. This year, we're going to do something new. Again, the podcast is relatively new. We're still feeling things out. But we've had enough of a variety of books that we are actually breaking things down into some subcategories, including short story collections and children's books. Now, a quick note before we get started. As a reminder, and for those new, in order to be on the Indie Author Showcase, your book must be either from an indie author or small press. And of course, it has to meet our high standards for quality, creativity, and storytelling. That means every titled feature here has already passed a rigorous bar. And when we announce these awards, it is for the best of the best. Honestly, just getting on the podcast means your book is good. So this is like the Top Gun of indie books. So if you're on the podcast, you're a nominee. If you didn't win, shouldn't feel bad, because you had to be good just to get this far. So before we go into the categories, let's talk about our honorable mentions for this year. We have two outstanding creators whose works left a lasting impression to us this year. Our first honorable mention goes to Alex Dark for his book, Greatest Hits of My Childhood Trauma. This is the only true biography we read all year, so it kind of fit into a special category. This biography was raw and honest, and also at times really hilarious. His candid storytelling and sharp humor drew us in, giving moments of laughter, reflection, and connections that lingered long after the reading. Our second honorable mention goes to Melanie Soul for her book, Generational Trauma, a deeply personal project she initiated as just a memoir to pass on stories to her grandchildren about being the child of a Holocaust survivor. This book landed in the news because when she ordered her personal copies through Amazon to hand out to her grandchildren, they were vandalized with anti-Semitic slurs. Melanie's courage reminds us how storytelling can preserve memory and confront injustice. So for her, she receives an honorable mention. Let's start with our children's books category. Normally on the podcast, we're not reading a lot of children's books, but this year we actually had 3. And that's enough for first, second, third. So we created their own category. These titles brought joy, imagination, and adventure to young readers all year round. Our candidates include Matthew Cousin for Afraid of Everything, Jennifer Milne for Plain Princess Jane, and Josh Spiro for Halloween. Taking third, Afraid of Everything by Matthew Cousin asks, what kind of scared are you? This collection of fun horror stories for young readers explores phobias from arachnophobia to zoophobia and everything in between. As the sun goes down, grab your friends, huddle under a blanket, and read by flashlight, frozen with terror at every creak and snap. With 26 unique tales, each paired with its own illustration, young fans get all the classic elements of horror they crave: fear, dread, risk, and doom, without the gore. We love the creativity and variety of this collection, though we had some uncertainty about whether its publisher, IDW, still counts as small press. Now, this was run as a Kickstarter, and he was selling this book at, I believe it was Monsterpalooza. So he's out there at conventions selling his book. So it sounds pretty indie author to me, but it was published by IDW, which is a comic book publisher that I wasn't really sure counted as small press. Giving him the benefit of the doubt, we put him on the podcast, but because of the questionability of his qualifications to be on the podcast, we're going to give him third. So our second place, I know with only 3 candidates, it's sort of taken away a little bit of the suspense, but Halloween by Josh Spiro lands in second place. This delightful Halloween adventure contains 3 short stories and 4 poems, all celebrating the spooky season. Hosted by Jacko, the 3-eyed jack-o'-lantern, each story explores themes of overcoming adversity while embracing the thrills of Halloween. With plenty of twists and heartwarming moments, this book will transform the air around you, making you feel the magic of the season every time you read it. Now, personally, as a horror fan, I enjoyed this one very much. But when it came to picking winners, I had to be a little bit more objective. This one talked to me more than our first place winner, and by process of elimination, I think you can figure out who won. But I had to sit there and ask myself, okay, do I like this because I'm a horror fan, or do I like this because it's a better book? And I had to kind of honestly tell myself, or answer myself, I liked Halloween more just because I like Halloween. Which leads us to first place. Plain Princess Jane by Jennifer Milne. When fairies give Princess Jane's magical birth gifts to the family cat by mistake, Jane is left ordinary, while Lady Katerina gains incredible abilities. As Jane grows up, she must navigate a royal retreat sleepaway camp in secret, team up with her practical cat, and face ogres, enemy schemes, and challenges that will determine the future of her kingdom. Clever, adventurous, and full of heart, this story showcases Jane's courage, wit, and resilience. And it's why this book took the top spot. Next up are short story collections. Again, we happen to have collected 3 different collections, so we were able to break this into its own subcategory. These collections explored everything from horror to humor and even a little bit of spice, giving readers a little bite of brilliance in every tale. Our candidates include Scott Harper for Lethal Lords and Ladies, Volume 1, Aaron Lewis for Dirty Thoughts and Awkward Boners, and Eric Williford for The Big Decay. So one of the problems in judging short story collections is that they are a collection of stories, which means they're not all going to be on equal footing, right? You're going to have a short story collection where you're going to have one story that maybe resonates really well and another one not so much. So we had to kind of evaluate the book as a whole. Which one had the better stories, was better written, which one was more consistently good. That made it very, very challenging to split these in the first, second, and third place. So, to the writers, hopefully you know that I did my best to try to be as impartial and honest with the reviews as possible. For third place, we're going with Lethal Lords and Ladies by Scott Harper. Vampires, immortal night creatures forever set apart from humanity, are given a new and unique light in this collection. Scott Harper portrays them across varied worlds of fantasy, horror, and science fiction. Whether exploring the bottoms of the ocean, traveling to the cold reaches of uncharted space, or battling other supernatural creatures for dominance, these vampires mean business. So gather your stakes and clutch your garlic tight as daylight draws to a close and the vampires claim the night. This book was consistently good. Every story in this collection, Scott writes pretty much exclusively about vampires. So everything in this book was a vampire story. But this was a collection of short stories that he had written throughout his career for various publications. The one, I don't want to say flaw, but the one thing that we saw in the book was because they weren't meant to be in a uniform book there, and they were all about vampires, there was a little bit of repetition here and there, such as we all know vampires die from a stake to the heart. How many times do we have to explain that? Now, keep in mind, when these short stories were written, they were written by themselves. They weren't meant to be with anything else. So the repetition is understandable. It makes sense considering the origin of the book. But it is just one of those things that, as good as it was, it did kind of drag it down a little bit. One of the more impressive parts of this was just how much variety he got from vampire books. I mean, we had vampires in the modern day. We had vampires in the Elizabethan period. We had vampires in the post-apocalypse. Every story was a fresh, unique spin on what happens to these characters when they live forever. So this book definitely deserves to be on this list. However, The Big Decay by Eric Willeford claims second. When nightmares thrive, sanity fades. This collection features 3 horror tales from Willeford's twisted mind. And Honora, an author struggling with severe writer's block, loses her grip on reality as she develops a disturbing relationship with a doll. Another story thrusts a down-and-out detective into the chaos of a budding zombie apocalypse. The Big Decay is haunting, inventive, and unforgettable, and Honora propelled this collection to second place. There was a third book, which, I should say third story. The third story was also good, but we were definitely getting diminishing returns. The Big Decay was a very interesting tale about a crime drama happening with this whole start of the zombie apocalypse kind of happening in the background. But the one that blew me away was Honora. This short story just was mind-blowing. When I started reading this, I was hooked. I am turning pages. I could not stop. That first short story was absolutely brilliant. And again, I'm not trying to diss the other 2 short stories. The Big Decay was a good short story. And the third short story, even though it wasn't my favorite, was still a good short story. But if all 3 of them had hit that quality bar that Honora had, this would easily have been a first place winner. That one short story was absolutely phenomenal. And it is why it ekes out a win over Scott Harper's book. So, Eric, you did an excellent job with Honora. I cannot say that enough. But to hit the top spot, we have to be consistently good. And that goes to Dirty Thoughts and Awkward Boners by Aaron Lewis. After 20 years as a stripper, Aaron has a few short stories to tell. And this collection includes all the filthy fantasies and never before told naughty tales that didn't make it into her previous books. Sometimes funny, but always a little spicy. These personal essays and short stories are pure smut for the sheer fun of it, and even include a few sexy photos in the book. I had the audiobook. I didn't get to see any photos, unfortunately. Hilarious, daring, and unforgettable, it's the kind of book that keeps readers laughing, thinking, and coming back for more. I will say one of the cool parts about this book is that there were definitely a few short stories that were just pure fiction. Unless she is secretly a succubus. No, that's probably not right. So, we got to see some biography stuff. We also got to see her more creative side. And again, being spicy does kind of help get somebody's attention. Now, last year we would not have touched a book like this because I was doing this with my teenage son, and so we had a no smut rule. But once he left the show, that opened the door to explore some more unconventional books. And that opened the door for Aaron to join the podcast. So, congratulations, Aaron, for the top spot. I really enjoyed this book. And I really wish I had more time to read your other stuff, because when we had her on the show and she was talking about some of her more fictional, kind of humorous fiction, kind of made me really want to read it. Unfortunately, because the goal of the podcast is to support indie authors, I'm trying to read as many different authors as possible. That makes revisiting a previous author pretty much impossible right now. But this is definitely one of the authors I really, really wish I could. Now let's celebrate our graphic novels and comics category, where the art and storytelling combine to create some truly memorable worlds. Let's go down to our list of candidates. From Bad Cat Comics, we have Kraken. From Dead Sky Comics, we have both Permadeath and Swallower of Shades. Finish Line Comics, The Immortal Era. Jason Brown for Venus Rising. Panic Comics for both Black Diamond and Tama. For third place, The Immortal Era by Finish Line Comics. In the year 2000, a mysterious event rendered the entire world immortal. 200 years later, the planet is overpopulated and depleted of resources, forcing countless citizens to live underground with no hope of ever seeing the surface. With striking visuals and immersive storytelling, this graphic novel pulls you into a dark, thrilling, and unforgettable world. For second place, we're giving it to Black Diamond by Panic Comics. While the art wasn't as crisp as its sister comic Tama, the gritty visuals perfectly complement the story's tone about a man forced to do horrible things to save his son. The tension, stakes, and moral complexity make this a standout story in this year's graphic works. And for our first place winner, Kraken by Bad Cat Comics. A helicopter transporting criminals makes an emergency landing on what they think is a ship, but the reality is much worse. Now prisoners and guards alike must survive both the Kraken and each other. Congratulations to all our winners, and for those that didn't win, remember, you wouldn't have been nominated if you didn't get on the podcast. You wouldn't have been on the podcast if your work wasn't good. These are the best of the best for the year. Finally, our novels category, featuring full-length works that had us turning pages late into the night. This is by far our largest category. Candidates include Doug Brode for Shelley, Raven Belasco for Blood Ex Libris, Aaron Beauregard for Playground, Nick DeWolf for Pulling Strings, Scott Meyer for That's Not Right, Mike Robinson, Walking the Dusk, Aki Wickoff, Players Are Stupid, Andrew Schrader, Unnameable, Greg Sobor, Pax Machina, Jude S. Walco, The Unhowled Horseman, S.C. Mendez, Little Season, Tatiana Sklone Bone, Such Lovely Skin, J.G. Parker, Them That Are Called, and Matthew Johnson for Extermination. I will say picking 3 winners out of this list was tough. Some of these books have won awards on their own already. This was a tough call. I mean, this is literally like um, when they do the Jeopardy winners thing, right? A lot of these are already award winners, and I am picking awards for award winning books. This was a tough list to whittle down to 3. So, again, if you are not one of the 3 winners, believe me, you missed about that much in most of these cases. These were excellent books, all of them. For third place, Extermination by Matthew Johnson. In this chilling thriller, a promised security of a gated community turns into a locked prison. The residents must find a way to escape before nature takes revenge and exterminates them all. As danger mounts, readers are forced to consider, what sacrifices would you make to survive the American dream? One of the things I liked about this book, and keep in mind, I am a horror fan and a horror writer. This was a horror book, so it's already got a little bit of a hook to get me in there. This one took no prisoners. This one was not afraid to make killing some of your darlings, if you know what I mean. When you read horror, a lot of times some of the children, infants, they tend to be like they get plot armor because nobody wants to see that happen. Reality is that the most vulnerable are going to be the first to go. And Matthew Johnson wasn't afraid to basically see some reality in his very unrealistic portrayal of nature going wild. And I mean unrealistic in the sense that hopefully we will not be attacked by giant rats and man-eating shrubs. But it was an excellent tale of nature turning against us and us doing whatever we could to survive. So this definitely deserves the third place. For second place, our last minute entry, Shelley by Doug Brode. Meet Shelley, a synthetic investigator who has never questioned its mission until a brutal murder of a U.S. senator throws everything into doubt. With her new partner, Jake August, Shelley races across America, from Washington, D.C. to the frozen plains of Alaska, in pursuit of a threat that is neither human nor machine, but the next evolution entirely. It is a gripping, high-stakes thriller that blends action, political intrigue, and cutting-edge sci-fi concepts. What impressed me about this work was the economy of the way Doug writes. With very few words, we got a very descriptive passage of what Shelley looks like, the world she's living in, the crime scene. One chapter could have been like maybe 7 pages, and it held so much weight with so few words. It was very impressive the way he wrote. I've read other books where there's just a lot of chaffa and fluff and repetitiveness. This is just pure economic. Anything that wasn't driving the story, it was out of there. Every word counted in this book, and it was so impressive how crisp and clean and efficient it was written. And the winner of the 2025 Indie Author Showcased Best of Awards for 2025 for novels is Walking the Dusk by Mike Robinson. With just one word uttered in the dead of night, young Charlie's life veers down a dark and unbelievable path. 30 years later, Dr. Charles Berry teaches physics at a small California college, haunted in dreams by childhood events. a strange presence in the house, otherworldly visits, and the shadow over his sister Megan. When his father dies, Megan returns as an artistic wanderer, and with her comes memories of unearthly creatures, a predatory entity, and an harrowing trek behind the walls of the known cosmos to save the very essence of his sister. Charles is once again drawn into these forces, navigating alien and impossible realms to set things right and keep Megan from slipping away forever. Dark, immersive, and unforgettable, this story is why Walked Into Dusk claimed the top prize. When I was reading this book, I was like, this is like a modern day Wrinkle in Time. And I don't want to get into spoilers, but when it came to saving Megan, there was this like twist that I never saw coming. And when you see it, it's almost like with The Sixth Sense, where you kind of roll back through the movie and you're like, now I get it. Because once you see it from that angle of knowing the ending, some of these things tend to line up perfectly with the story. It was so well crafted. And again, if you've ever read A Wrinkle in Time as a child, this is A Wrinkle in Time for adults. This was an excellent book, and clearly the easy win for number one. So that wraps up our 2025 Best of Awards show. Congratulations again to all the winners, honorable mentions, and anyone who's ever been featured on the showcase this year. Thank you to all the authors, creators, and illustrators who shared their incredible works with us. Remember, if you want to be on the podcast, if you want your book featured in the showcase, the rules are simple. You have to be an indie author or from a small press. We get a copy of your book. If your book is donated to us, it goes to the top of the list. If I have to buy it out of pocket, I'll get to it when I can get to it. If we read it and we like it, you're on the podcast. If we read it and we don't like it, we'll never say a word. We will not bring a book up here just to tear it down. Any book that's on this podcast means it is a good book. Any critique that I give a book while on the podcast is given out of love or to trying to fill in the potential readers with the kind of book that they're getting into, not as a criticism or as any kind of strong negative. If it's on the showcase, this book is good and worth your time if it is the kind of flavor that you are into. Remember, the podcast is also available on YouTube and Spotify. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and support the show by grabbing your official Indie Author Showcase merch at shopspectralink.com. It has been a rough year, and next year is not looking to be any easier. I do appreciate your support and your patience. We will continue to strive to build this podcast, to build a community of indie authors that support each other, that help promote each other, and I will continue on with this mission as best I can. We already have a couple of interviews that are potentially getting lined up for next year. I will be spending some time upgrading the podcast a little bit, so season 3 should have a little bit of a more polished look to it than the previous seasons. And I am still looking, hopefully, to find a co-host. I think the podcast does run better when it's not just me. With that said, continue with us into next year. Season 3 is just around the corner. And until then, keep on reading.